Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, on our show, we discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and of course, what's an aging population, which I fall right into. I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a senior placement and elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families. They'll work with you in determining the right path for you or your loved one and discuss various long-term care options, whether it is in-home care, assisted living, memory care, or nursing. If you just need an advocate, you can get advice from a Senior Care Authority advisor for your loved one. And for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go to www.seniorcareauthority.com. And I just want to, again, just thank everybody for all their support. Our listeners are growing all the time. Seems many of you have downloaded our free app that you can. It's called The Aging Boomers on your iPhone or Android phone. A lot of you have gone to iTunes or iHeartRadio or just gone to our website at agingboomers.com. But thank you for getting the word out. We're growing it each and every day. And it's because of also many of the great people have taken their time to come on the show and educate our listeners. And we have someone today also. Her name is Amy. Amy, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. I want to do it right.
Panza.
Panza. Okay, so Amy Panza. Amy has her Doctor of Pharmacy and has held many positions within the profession that has fueled her entrepreneurial spirit. She saw the growing need for patients to have an informed and complete knowledge of their medications and created a company by the name of MedFormation, which we'll learn more about in a moment. Throughout her career, Amy has seen firsthand the dangers that exist in the pharmacy marketplace. Amy has always risen to the top in her industry because being a pharmacist is not only her career, but her passion. So, Amy, I want to welcome you to the Aging Boomers. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, this is just such an important subject. People, as you know, I'm in the industry and, we're seeing a lot of people with high fall risks and over-medicating and all sorts of things that you could kind of point in a lot of cases to maybe more mismanagement of medications. So you have the company that you started called MedFormation. How'd you come up with that name? What does that mean exactly?
Well, it's really an interesting story. As I knew I was going to open up my own business, I wanted to capture sort of what the essence was of what I'm doing. And so the name MedFormation comes from the formation of a plan for your medications. And so I took basically med and form and came up with the name MedFormation. So it means a formation of a plan for your medications. And that's what I do. That's essentially the role that I have when I work with clients.
Well, I think it's great. I have to say, I hadn't heard much about this type of service, which we'll talk more about, but recently, I have to say, I've heard about various consultants like yourself that have been popping up, not across the country, but in certain markets. So do you feel this is a long-term trend?
I do. Well, on a couple of levels, I hope so, certainly for my business sake. But I really do believe that as boomers continue to age and we continue to
I think that's the plan. I think that is the plan. We're going to age.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But I believe that with the housing shortage and really wanting to keep people aging in homes, in their homes, medications are often overlooked. And I'm trying to sort of raise an awareness of, we do a really great job in home health with caring for patients, bathing and taking care of cooking needs and medical needs therein. but we oftentimes overlook medications, or medications are being assessed by people that aren't pharmacists. And that's concerning to me. I do know that some home health companies offer a physical therapist to review the medications, and that to me, on the surface, I don't necessarily understand. And then sometimes nurses will do medication reconciliation, but my goal is to change that and to let people know that pharmacists are the ones that are trained to really do medication reconciliation. And when I look at somebody's medication list, I can pretty immediately identify if there's something that doesn't look quite right, whether it's in the terms of a drug interaction or even a high dose or a low dose or a combination that isn't something that we like to see, generally speaking, in medical practice. And so I do think this is long-term, and I hope so for not only my business, but for those who do want to age successfully at home.
Right. Okay, good. So, I mentioned in introducing you that you're aware of some of the dangers that exist in the pharmacy marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit more, expand upon that?
Sure, I'd love to. I got my pharmacist license in 2001, but I've been in a pharmacy since I was 16 years old. And why that's important is just to kind of give people an understanding that I've been in the industry for a very, very long time. And some of the things that I've started to see throughout my career have become alarming to me as a healthcare practitioner. And some of the things that I've seen are the advent of mail order pharmacies. Certainly with the expansion of insurance companies and the limits that they put on medications that people need for certain health-related issues. Certainly, a lot of people are using multiple pharmacies now, which is very concerning. I've seen people basically pharmacy coupon shop, which is a very dangerous practice. And really now, since people see a lot of specialists, there's a lack of coordination of care. So in other words, if you have an orthopedic specialist and you have an internal medicine doctor and you have an endocrinologist, all these different components oftentimes aren't in the same clinic. And so there's a lack of coordination of care. So in other words, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, so to speak. And oftentimes I will find medication mismanagement just because you're seeing so many doctors. So there really are some concerning trends that I've seen over the past several decades, and that's why I started my own business.
So do you see that this, obviously there's a need, for someone like yourself, mm-hmm. but do you see mm-hmm. the industry changing in a sense so doctors will know what's going on, maybe have access to any type of prescriptions that have been given to a patient, regardless of where they came from, or that's going to be a difficult thing to do?
Your question's a complicated one. We could actually probably spend an hour just talking about it.
I kind of figured that.
But suffice to say, there's a number of factors that are getting in the way of a doctor's ability to have the complete picture of a patient, the complete medical record. And that's because there are so many different softwares that exist, electronic medical records that the U.S. government hasn't really made a position statement on which electronic health records maybe should be used, the ones that communicate the best. And so what we have is a lot of doctors' offices pick and choose an electronic health record that meets their budget and meets their needs to care for their patients, but oftentimes it doesn't communicate with maybe, let's say, the orthopedics system. Or so if they're not a part of a healthcare system, that's where those gaps come from. And so there's sort of that piece of it. The other piece, too, is that, and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, that's fine.
Your question was...
But we were just really talking about, just some of the, dangers that exist and also, just talking about how, again, the bigger question of how to manage the situation. I mean, you're certainly a tremendous resource to people, but the problem seems to be that doctors just don't know what the other hand is doing, so that's really
right.
what we were talking about.
Well, and one of the things that I'm proud to offer when I meet with clients is that when they sign up for my services and when I do a medication evaluation, what I do in order to try to coordinate care is I send an updated medication list to all their providers,
Gotcha.
right? So let's say somebody's got 4 or 5 different doctors. After I meet with a patient, I will send all 5 doctors an updated medication list and provide them a report that I've seen and consulted with the patient and whether or not I have any recommendations. And so this, to me, is kind of bridging that gap where computer systems don't talk, where maybe doctors are too busy to talk to one another, that at least I know that as a clinician that I've met with this patient and I've communicated all of that to their physicians and their practitioners. And so that's one of the things that I offer when I meet with patients. It's not just about meeting the patient and getting the job done, but it's really about including the doctors in the whole process and making sure everybody, maybe I can help the right hand know what the left hand is doing a little bit better.
Well, I'm saying that you fill a tremendous gap. There's no doubt about that. So, for our listeners, if you were to be meeting with a family for the first time, okay, give us an idea of, the types of things you would look for, questions you'd be asking. Give us a feel for what goes on.
So when I come into the home, generally speaking, I ask the patient to take out all their medications, and that includes any supplements, any herbal medications, anything that they consume that they feel like has a medical need for them. And we put it all out on the table. And basically, I start the process of sort of my evaluation at that point is really my documentation time. I need to write everything down and make sure I have a complete history on the patient as far as medically, that I know of anything recently, any recent health goals that they're working on, whether it's reducing blood pressure or getting their diabetes under control. And so I'll go through all of that. I'll get all that information. And obviously it's very interactive. So I'm talking to the patient and the family and getting their, insight as to what's going on and what their concerns are. And then from there, essentially, I leave the first home visit. And the first home visit can take up to about an hour and a half. I leave from that point, and then I do kind of what I tell people is my pharmacist homework. So I, at that point, do my official evaluation, looking at everything that we've gone over. I talk to the doctor's offices if I need to see any laboratory results to help me better my recommendations for overall health. And then at this point, when I'm doing my homework, I write up all of my recommendations and my plan for the patient, if you will. And then I go back to the home and I sit down with the family or caregivers, and we talk about what it is what my assessment is, essentially. If there are medications that are underprescribed or overprescribed or too many medications or incorrect doses or maybe supplements that are counteracting or drug interactions that may be taking place, or how many pharmacies are you using? And we'll talk about all of that. And then we'll talk about some lifestyle modifications as well that may help in their, taking care of themselves a little bit better as far as self-care. And then as long as they sort of agree with all of that, as we've discussed and on my reporting, then I take that information after that and I submit it to all their doctors. So all of their prescribers get a copy of my evaluation and any recommendations that I have. And so if there are any therapeutic recommendations, let's say to raise a dose of a medication to try to get a better result for blood pressure, let's say, those are decisions that I have to work with the physician on, because pharmacists cannot prescribe medications. So I don't tell patients, well, you need to raise your dose of something. I'll say, let's talk to your doctor and make sure he or she is okay with raising that dose so we can get your blood pressure under better control. And so it really becomes a collaborative sort of thing. I basically become a part of their healthcare team, which is fantastic. I hope one day that all doctors' offices have a pharmacist on staff. And sadly, it would knock my business out of the woods. But really, that's what patients deserve, is to meet with a pharmacist at every medical encounter.
Right. So, listen, I think what you're doing is tremendous. Okay. But I guess I'm wondering how do people find you? I mean, I'm in the industry, in the senior services industry, and I just started recently hearing about this type of a service. So to the average person out there, if they don't know that this type of a service exists, how do they find out about you?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that you can do. And, obviously, Frank, some of the issues, too, that folks have is just their ability to manipulate the Internet, if you will. There are a lot of seniors that I work with that aren't really digitally connected, which certainly we can all understand. And in those cases, I would say do a lot of asking around. That, as I've encountered some marketing challenges myself, just as a one-woman operation, the more people that I meet and the more people that I tell about my services, then they're going to sort of spread that information as well. And so asking around can be very helpful. For those who are Internet savvy, certainly you can do any number of Google searches in your area. But really, I try to partner with a lot of senior organizations locally, and so that they're aware of my services, so that as people go to senior service events or are seeking senior services, that my information is somewhere available to them. So in other words, organizations like your own, or certainly I've done some sponsorships of some other websites and done a lot of presentations in the community to let people know that my services do exist. And one of the interesting things is that this is up and coming, so I'm pioneering something, I like to think. And, depending on where you live, this service may or may not be available, unfortunately. And so in those cases, we rely on telemedicine, which is basically sort of the best we can do, and we can hop on Skype and kind of do things visually that way. But for people who live in large urban areas, there are a few cities now that are offering a service like this. And so it's really just about working with your senior groups, asking a lot of questions. If you're Internet savvy, doing Internet searches to see if you can find folks. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, if you feel like you've run out of your resources, you can talk to your doctor about it. But again, pharmacists are the drug experts, and so I always encourage people to really reach out to their pharmacist. And if the only pharmacist that is available is the one at your local dispensing pharmacy, well, then that's still better than nothing.
Right.
So, but unfortunately, he or she may not have the time or the ability to be as comprehensive as somebody that comes into the home.
You brought up two very important parts of this process. That's the doctor, and that's the pharmacist. So I guess I'm wondering, why wouldn't, and maybe they do, wouldn't doctors, it would be helpful if they referred someone like you to their patients, or another pharmacist who
absolutely
refer people like you to their customers?
Well, Frank, those are fantastic questions, and your question actually has sort of two sides to it. I have received referrals from other pharmacists in the community, so it is important that I spread my name and my services to my own community to let them know I'm here. This is what I do. So if you have a challenging patient that you're not able to spend enough time on, please send he or she my way, that I have the ability to do that, since unfortunately you can't, given your certain practice situation. But one of the issues with doctors is that I think there's still kind of that old school mentality that doctors feel a little threatened. You have to remember that a doctor oversees all of your care, correct? And so, for you to say to a doctor, basically, I want a pharmacist to review my meds, it's almost as if you're saying, I'd like to get a second opinion, because right. Doctors are the ones who prescribe the meds. And so there have been some challenges for myself and for patients. And I'm trying to educate as much as I can. Right. A lot of the newer physicians are very much about the team approach to healthcare and collaboration and working with all disciplines in medicine to make sure the patients are well taken care of.
Right.
And so I tend to do better with sort of the newer generation of physicians than I would say sort of the older generation of physicians.
Yeah, that makes
and so
sense.
there is some of that.
Yep. So you must have some results or outcomes that hopefully you can share with us maybe some great results that you've had with some clients. If you're able to share that, of course, we don't need any names. Can you do that?
Of course. No, you know what? It's funny, Frank, because in the 2 years that I've been doing this, actually every patient that I've helped has actually been successful. And I take great pride in that. And sometimes, the things that I come across are very small, subtle changes that we need to make. Sometimes they're lifestyle modifications that I ask patients to make to improve their health. But recently, I was able to help a senior citizen who had just recently moved into an assisted living facility. And she had kind of been hospitalized multiple times in the past year for different things. And her daughter had called me and said, I'm really concerned about my mom's medicines. I feel like she's taking too much. Can you please come review my mom's medicines? So when I got to the assisted living facility and sat down for the review, she was taking 23 medications.
Wow.
And I was able to successfully get her down to 7. And so, she's probably my best success story, or maybe my most dramatic, if you will. A lot of the medications that she was on were just the result of discharge after hospital discharge that nobody had really taken the time to evaluate, should she be on this anymore? It was sort of just that culmination of addition onto addition onto addition. So I really was able to help improve her quality of life going forward. And certainly she didn't need to swallow near as many pills every day. And I do believe she was having some side effects. So sometimes I can do some really, really terrific things like that. And sometimes it's a little bit more subtle. But I will say that everybody I've helped has been successful.
That's great. So what suggestions do you have to families, either for their loved ones or to let's say the seniors or the individuals themselves, as far as being their own advocate in regards to this? What recommendations do you have to them? Because I think there is still a mentality out there that when a doctor says, I'm prescribing you this, that there's never any questions asked. It's like,
that's right. That's right.
I know they know what they're doing. I'm going to listen to them. Of course,
right.
I think things are changing to always, to question it. But any thoughts there? Any thoughts there?
I do have some thoughts there. And what I would tell people is that, trust your instincts. You know your body. And if you feel like there's something that's not correct or something that isn't right, that you have to trust your instincts and do question everything. And, medications are so oftentimes overlooked. And that makes me really sad as a practitioner, because obviously it's always on the forefront of my brain. And people forget that medications are very, very strong chemicals. And sometimes there's side effects in the body, or they cause some unexpected changes in disease process and some of these other things. And so I think what I tell people is just pay attention to your body. And if you feel like you're concerned about something, then be an advocate for yourself and be a voice. And if you don't feel like your healthcare practitioners are listening to you, then consider getting different healthcare practitioners, quite frankly, because we all know our body's best. And for those that are listening that are taking care of a senior citizen, if you in your heart of heart feel like maybe mom or dad is taking way too many medications, or they're falling a lot, or they're forgetting to take their medications, or you've seen some changes in their cognitive ability, or their maybe any other kind of side effect that they might be having, then we do need to question medications. We do. And that's part of the awareness that I'm trying to raise, is just be your own advocate. Pay attention to your body. You know it best. And if you're concerned, then find people who are also concerned to be on your team.
Great. Good point. So I know we put the emphasis here on seniors and, the boomers that are aging and all of that. But I would think, and I would think that that's the greatest percentage of people you work with, but do you work with others as well?
I do, actually, and I don't. Some people do ask, if seniors are the only population I work with, and I don't actually. I'll work with anybody. And I usually tell people that if a patient says to me, "I'm concerned about my medication," as a pharmacist, I automatically become concerned, because, again, people know their bodies best, and so sometimes it's just about me getting to the heart of what their concern is and whether or not it's a drug-related problem. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, or sometimes we can't come up with an answer. And so I've worked with children. I've worked with middle-aged adults. I've worked with young adults. Seniors certainly we worry the most about because compensatorily their bodies don't bounce back as quickly, right? So we worry, any variance in their ability to take care of themselves or for their body to take care of itself, it's a lot harder. So we do worry more about seniors. But no, I've consulted with parents of children. I've consulted with any age.
Okay, good. So, I want to make sure people know if they want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you're doing, how would they go about doing that?
Well, so I have a website, and it's the web address is www.helpmymeds.com. And on there, you'll see all the services that I offer. And I'm also doing pharmacogenomic testing, which is something that I'm very passionate about as well, which is basically making use of new science for testing a body's genetic ability for how well we metabolize medications, which I think is another piece to the puzzle. So my website is helpmymeds.com. They can also call. I am Mountain Standard Time. My phone number is 720-870-8233. And I just want to tell your listeners I'm happy to work with folks outside of the Denver area. I have done this in the past, and we can do it through a Skyping situation or some other electronic situation if that's available. And if not, we'll do it the old-fashioned way, and we'll do it over the phone, which is certainly fine as well. So those are the two best ways to reach me and to kind of learn more about my services.
Great.
Yeah, so
Great.
phone, and email. Oh, and actually,
Great.
no, I apologize. I didn't give you my email address.
Okay.
My email, I love emails. My email address is Amy, A-M-Y, at MedFormationLLC.com. So the name of my business is MedFormation. So it's Amy at MedFormationLLC.com.
Great.
So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on email as well. And I always respond to emails. So if you're more comfortable doing it that way, that's fine too.
Great. Amy Panza with MedFormation. Also, you could look at her website at helpmymeds.com. Amy, thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks to all your listeners.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us on the Aging Boomers. And just be safe out there, and we'll talk to y'all soon.